Now, no one goes hungry in the 21st century in Britain. We live in a welfare state, don't we? Ever since the great reforming government of 1945 promised to slay the 5 great giants of idleness, ignorance, disease, squalor and want, that has been the working assumption. But in the last 5 years, there's been an explosion in the number of people being fed not from earnings or benefits, but from using food banks. In 2007, the Trussell Trust, for example, fed nearly 14,000 people. And by the year of the election, they were feeding over 60,000, a total which then doubled. This year and next, they're expecting to feed 200,000 people. Paul Mason set out to find out why, in a land of plenty, so many are going hungry.
They say you can tell a poor area by how many chicken joints it has. By that definition, Coventry has its fair share of poverty.
This is a typical Midlands industrial city with 306,000 people, and by the City Council's own statistics, 59,000 of them living on the breadline.
As Britain has dipped again into recession, professionals dealing with poverty have noticed the rise of something new.
I have watched people sitting down cooking oven-baked chips and mayonnaise, and that's their main evening meal with children and with health problems.
In some ways, this recession's been kinder than expected. Unemployment never topped 3 million, house repossessions never became catastrophic. So it's all the more strange that across Britain we're now seeing something we haven't really seen since the 1930s. And that is hunger. This is what it looks like when somebody else gets to pick the food your family is going to eat. It's a food bank in Coventry.
Kilo pasta.
The Trussell Trust, the charity that runs these places, is opening 2 or 3 new ones every week. All the food's donated and it's of high quality, but demand is high too, and growing, and I've come here to find out why.
Can I go through? Yeah.
This family, including a 4-week-old baby, have been referred here for an emergency food donation. What's brought you here?
Benefit changes. I had my daughter move in with me, moved back from my father's, and I had a new baby. So because they had to be added onto my claim, caused it to fail. Too many children living in my house, and it's not working out on the computer.
So no benefits are coming into the house?
I'm getting my child benefit, that's it. Child tax credit for the rest of the children, but not 2. So
and what does that mean in terms of food?
Well, it means that I haven't got the money to go shopping. I'm just able to cover my bills and not get into debt at the moment.
So if we went back to your house right now, what food would be in the cupboard?
Rice, a bit of rice and some bread that I haven't got anything else in at all.
This, it turns out, is not unusual. On top of people whose claims fail accidentally, there's been a massive spike in the number of people getting their job seekers allowance stopped temporarily, or sanctioned as it's called. 167,000 people in the first 3 months of this year.
Going to DWP and asking for crisis loans, it's landing myself in more debt. I think I'm hitting like the £900 mark now of being debt because of my benefits keep being stopped and started, and just not knowing where I am with benefits at all.
What you get here is food to feed a family for 3 days, and since it opened, the Coventry Centre has fed 10,000 people that way. For just under half of them, it's this problem of benefit disruption that's left them hungry.
You know, we do some generic statistical analysis. We know that 43% of people who present at food bank, it's down to a benefit delay, a benefit change, or a crisis loan refused. It is reasonable to expect people to apply for a certain number of jobs per week, yes. But if you fail that particular test and you have a sanction, the sanction can be there for weeks. Now the logic flaw in that is exactly where do you expect people to go and find money during that period if job seekers is supposed to be the point of last resort in terms of income?
So often people's circumstances change, sometimes they just don't obey the rules of the benefit system.
Yes, all of that happens as well.
And you then find them walking through the door hungry.
Well, effectively, we become the backstop to the welfare state system.
Food banks don't feed people indefinitely. After 2 or 3 visits, they aim to get people into programmes that address the root cause of the crisis. But if half the people at food banks have fallen through the welfare system, what about the other half? Why are there thousands of people with jobs in this one city who can't feed themselves?
We've seen the queue out the front just increase in the last year, 18 months. We've got now, we have about 15 people queuing from sort of 7, 8 o'clock in the morning by the time we open. At 9:15 there's 30 people waiting to be seen, and that's what happens on a day-by-day basis.
The Citizens Advice Bureau is one of the agencies in Coventry that can refer people to the food bank. And they've identified the other big cause of food poverty: debt.
Unfortunately and horrifically, it's often the food that is the thing that is having to give when people are trying to pay creditors. They're using high interest lenders, payday loans and so on to try and get through their week, and sometimes it's the food, it's sometimes the heating. There's a saying that we've got people either heat or eat.
Expensive credit for poor people is the new boom industry in Britain. As well as the pawnbrokers and payday loan shops, there are also doorstep lenders. The interest rates are massive. Many people struggle to pay them. But the question is, why do they end up prioritising debt over food?
I'm going to visit one of our clients who, because of health problems...
Mary Shine is a caseworker at the Citizens Advice Bureau. She and her colleagues are referring about 10 people a week to the food bank. And where debt's involved, there's often a doorstep lender who has first call on the money.
Doorstep lending is always about preying on people who are unable to access high street banks, get a loan, a cheap loan or an overdraft or a credit card. And they also have this sort of thing where they befriend them. So it's not the man from the credit company, it is, you know, my friend Tom, who's been coming for years.
And so if you're faced with having to say to Tom, I can't pay my debts this week, it feels bad.
It feels bad. I feel they're letting Tom down, and Tom will say, you know, I'm going to lose my commission and you're letting me down, and they've just guilt-tripped into making the payments.
And what is the result for families?
The result is they're paying £15, £20 a week to the doorstep lender out of their food bill.
It's this priority given to debt repayment, not just doorstep debt, but council tax and rent arrears, that explains why even people in work end up at the food bank.
Even now, there's not a lot of people that know that I use food bank. To have to admit to myself I'm not coping, I'm in debt management, I need help with food to feed my family. It's not nice.
Christina Thomas has a job, but came to the food bank after an acute family crisis forced her onto statutory sick pay, and her debts went out of control.
I was trying to help my eldest son while he was in financial difficulty, and obviously taking care of my teenage boy as well. Even though I was working part-time, it was like after rent, council tax, all the household bills, there was never enough for the pot, if you like, and it became more of you know, like about debt all the time rather than having any surplus from my wages.
What happens if this place didn't exist? Because there's some places they don't exist.
No.
What would happen?
Things become really hard for me. Really, really hard for me. It's something I don't particularly want to think about because things are hard already. It took things to get that bad for me to pick up the phone in the first place and meet someone like Gavin and say, you know, I'm not coping. I'm trying, but I'm not coping.
These are two stories from one food bank. There are 250 food banks across the UK, and last year they fed 130,000 people. The welfare system is supposed to be a safety net, but on the evidence we've found, about half of all the hunger being officially dealt with is caused by people not falling through it, but being forced through it by the system itself. The real safety net is no churches and charity. And as benefits are cut and rules tightened, the food banks expect to be seeing a lot more people soon.